welcome everyone. I'm Diane Oplinger, and this is typically some of you know me as the gifted consultant here at the ESC. And I usually have my we used to call them gifted lead teacher meetings. And I've now called them gifted K-12 meetings because we have so many people joining us that have gifted students in their classroom, which is great. So thank you all of you who are attending. I guess probably in the fall, Amanda Nickerson came to me and said, how about if I see we have our meeting on the same night, and a lot of my participants are interested in differentiation. Can we possibly do that together? And I said, of course. In the meantime, Christy Ovak is my new colleague, and she is taking the reins of the 612 group. And so tonight is basically the Christy show. But I want to welcome Christy to our group. She will be doing some gifted as well. So she'll be taking over here in just a minute. I apologize for my voice. I like to say I don't feel as bad as I sound, but I pretty much do. So we'll just get through it and it'll be fine. So let's move ahead. Again, one more for those of you that just came in the last couple of minutes, you will see in the chat box that there's the link to the slides. There's the attendance link for the ELA 612, and then there's the attendance link for the gifted K-12. We're also offering a book. We have some left over from when we did the book study in the last couple of years, the Making Differentiation a Habit, which is a Diane Heacock's book. This book. So if you would like that book, please, there it is. Chrissy just put it in again. Fill that form out, which you might want to fill out anyway, but indicate in that form whether you would like a book or not. I think we have 30 copies.
I got 25. So
25
and 30.
So we will get them to you. And if we have more people want them, then we have copies. Just trust us that we'll do an official drawing and we'll let you know if you're one of the winners. Okay. So any questions before we move and jump in? We have lots to share tonight. Okay. All right, let's keep moving in. All right. So Christy, why don't you just take over?
Sure. I wanted to start just by thanking everyone. I know I just left the classroom within the last year, and I know how hard it is to get yourself together and come to a meeting at 4 o'clock in the afternoon after a full day of teaching. So I just want to start by saying thank you so much for being here. Our goal today is just to help give you some resources, help you collaborate, and then again, bringing everybody together so that we can continue the work that we've been doing. And Amanda Nickerson has been doing amazing work. Hopefully I can step up and share some of that information as well. She's here. She's going to be jumping in from home also, and we're going to just continue the work and then hopefully move ahead with some things for Gifted Ed as well.
Yep. Good collaboration. This is our collaborative presentation crew. In case you can't see us, this is our official portraiture there. But you can always find us. I think we're always available. And if I don't answer you or any of us don't answer you right away, we will get back to you. But please don't hesitate to contact us if, maybe you have now more of a gifted question or more of an ELA question. This will tell you where to focus your calls. Okay. All right. This is just more, I think we've said this 8,000 times, but if you haven't signed in yet, there's the QR codes. You can use those with your phone. And then the sign in info, that is going to help us later. There's the book as well, but that's going to help us later, maybe break out into some groups so that the information on that form. So if you'll do that. Okay. And just we've got lots, as I said, lots of information coming up. But in March, I will have another meeting for gifted lead educators, whatever you want to call them. But that one will be a math focus. And then there will be an ELA 612 meeting on March 9th. Mine is the 16th, and that one will be on March 9th. I will let you know, mine are not always all virtual. So I'll let you know what it'll be at that point. I believe the 612 one is always virtual. Okay. All right. Now gifted updates. I'm very, very, very excited. Deidre Stafford was here in 2019, but right before COVID, and we had a great day over at the church over by Washington Square. And so she has agreed to come back. The interesting thing is she said, I actually had a full schedule for this year, but she had such a good day when she was here with us before that she has agreed to come back. So she's coming for the February 21st. Her title of her talk is the same as the book, Teaching Kids to Thrive. It will be part social emotional and also part helping gifted kids to think, deeper thinking and that sort of stuff. So I'm not quite sure how she's going to embed all that. I can't tell you, just come half a day if you're interested in social emotional, because I really think it'll be something that she'll embed together. But I'm not going to click on that flyer, but later if you want to click, there's the flyer and the information is there to register. We tried to keep the costs down. It's $75 for the whole day, and that includes lunch. If you would like the book, it's $100, and that also then includes lunch. But all the information is on that link, which is, it says flyer, but it'll take you to the registration. Okay, and this is just thrown in there, just a reminder, we do offer graduate credit. You can click on that link and it will give you the information. Basically, if you want grad credit through the ESC, you just have to have one of the it's 15 hours per credit. And you just have to have one of the hours that comes from the ESC. The other 14 can be from a mishmash of other things. So if you need any more information, you can click on that and go back to that later. Sorry. We're also really pleased to announce that we're doing our high impact conference for educators again this year. And this year it will be in person. It will be at Glen Oak High School. We're really, really excited that it's back in person, but we can't have a conference without presenters. And I bet that everybody who's on this call tonight could probably present something. We're looking for presentations anywhere from a half an hour to an hour. So the link there is to submit your proposal. And I'm guessing if you submit it, it will be approved. So think of something, it doesn't have to be any grandiose ideas. It can just be something as simple as, maybe it's even something you learned tonight and how you used it. But again, I'm anxious to have the in-person back, but we do have to have people to present. We think, we just heard in the last couple of days, there will be a payment for people who are presenting. So we weren't sure of that till about a week ago. So we think that will be the case. Okay. All right. ELA, is Amanda on?
I am here. Hi, everybody.
Thank you, Amanda.
Christy, were you still planning on talking about this part, or did you want me to?
If you want to go ahead and go to the next slide, let me talk about the next slide. I'll share, and please jump in. When I came on board in January and I started to meet with Diane and Amanda, one of the things we talked about is doing this collaborative meeting for gifted 6 through 12 ELA and bringing all of that together with differentiation. Those are all really big areas. So it took a little time to sort of decide what is it that we want to focus on. And in my discussions with Amanda, we especially talked about tiering as a form of differentiation, but it really became this collaboration between how do we help people work through using the techniques and practices of science of reading with differentiation, with gifted. And it has been really interesting to work with these wonderful women and learn about all the things that have been going on. And if you have been in those meetings with Amanda, the information is just amazing. And I have, because I wanted her to also, have us continue all of that work, she's going to talk about some of those things. So I've embedded in our slides today information about science of reading, if this is the first time that you're really hearing some of that. And that's where Amanda's going to be jumping in and sharing all of that.
So did you want me to jump in here?
Go ahead.
All right. So, for our lead educator group, for those of you who aren't a part of it, we're part of the gifted group. We've spent some time over the last 4 years delving into the science of reading. And we recognize that in one meeting here, where we're trying to bring all of these big buckets of work and different areas together, there's no way we could do we can't do differentiation, full justice. We can't go super deep into the science of reading. It's really more of an introduction about how do we start to merge these pieces of work so that we are meeting the needs of all of our students, including our advanced and gifted learners in the classroom. And so this slide really just shows what we focused on in our network this year. We started out looking at how to maximize instructional time for all learners. And then we moved into growing and scaffolding adolescent writers. Tonight, we're obviously talking about really scratching the surface of what differentiated science of reading instruction might look like. And then we're going to move on to talk about cultivating a love of literature in a secondary classroom with an emphasis on building knowledge and enduring understandings, which in conversations with Christy, we really connected to the work of Kaplan and the depth and complexity icons and things like that some of the gifted folks on this call may be familiar with. We see ways to, again, merge all of this together and learn from one another and improve our instruction across the board. So if you want to go to the next slide. Diane, did you want to tackle this one?
No.
I can do this one.
Okay.
Okay. For those that are just joining, and I know many of my friends are coming on for the first time to some of these meetings, just kind of wanted to mention what ESE is all about. And it really goes, even you can read through that yourself if you go to the next slide. More importantly, it's about leadership, and you all are great leaders. You all are here sharing this information back in your TBTs, going back and not only in your TBTs, in our discussions, we thought, so much of this is rich information that can go to your teams of teachers. If you're a middle school teacher, we're talking social studies and science. If you're a high school teacher, definitely sharing it in your departments. And so again, for me, I loved that Amanda had shared these slides before, because I think it's important to let all of you know, if you're here, you're learning, you're collaborating, there's some things we would love for you to continue to share. We're all in it together, so let's continue to collaborate.
And with the gifted part, gifted intervention specialists, we're not on our own little island like it used to be. It used to be years ago, you pretty much were in your room, you had the gifted kids, and now you've got those gifted kids out there in every classroom, et cetera, et cetera. We have specialists, and that makes you the leader that we can look to you to get this kind of information to everyone.
And I can talk about this. One of the things that I know, I'm sort of the liaison. I work both with Amanda and with Diane. And I realized in working with Amanda that those teachers that are K-5 teachers are very aware of what's happening as far as an update in literacy when it comes to dyslexia information. Teachers that are 6 through 12 probably don't have a lot of that information or haven't really watched much of that information happening yet. This is really just for those teachers that maybe have heard there's some things going on with dyslexia in your district, but you didn't know what. Just kind of pointing it out. You can go to the link to see more about that if you're interested in that. Amanda, certainly you can speak to that if you feel like there's more that you'd like to share with that.
I think the only thing I'll add that you won't be able to read here yourself is that we know there are certain requirements pertaining to screening older students to ascertain if dyslexia might be part of that child's profile. And certainly that's pertinent to all of you who work with gifted learners too, because our twice exceptional students can have dyslexia. That might be part of their profile. And so I would just continue to monitor this. We at this time don't have an approved list of assessments for secondary. So that's probably the biggest question mark as we look over this information. We do have approved screening tools for elementary and recommendations from the state about what we're using to determine this and to identify risk. I'm still trying to get clarification on what that looks like at the secondary level. So we will pass that information along once it becomes available or we get a little bit of clarification on that.
Thanks. Next. Do you want me to present this and talk about it, or you just want to share? So this is about, if you're looking at the information on the science of reading, again, as I talked with Amanda, I realize that many of you have been through her lead teacher meeting 6 through 12, and you have been delving very deeply into this information. If this is new for you, we talked about making sure that those people that are just coming on board are really learning a little bit about what this all means, and more importantly, then how does that all work when we start talking about differentiation. So these links are very in-depth. I would, if this is your first time learning about science of reading, I would definitely say the one in the middle there, the overview of science of reading from Amanda that she put together, that document, that has so many links that really get you started. Amplify, which I know some of my friends are using in their district, has some really great information, guides, videos about science of reading that kind of explain it all and help you kind of walk through that. And then, of course, there's the plan to raise literacy achievement. So those links are all available to you. I don't know that we want to delve in with our time frame the way we are, but wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to have that information.
Does anyone have, oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Amanda.
I was just going to add that the state has, some of you may be aware that the state has released a course about dyslexia and the science of reading more broadly for K-3 teachers at this point, that all K-3 teachers are required to take if they haven't been through letters or another approved course. They are creating a course for 4th through 12th grade intervention specialists. And so again, this is a free course. And if you are someone who does work with twice exceptional students and you have any students with dyslexia or who struggle with reading on your caseload, even if you are, a freshman English teacher or a gifted specialist, that might be something to keep an eye on. We'll push it out once we have access to that as well. We don't have a release date or anything at this time, but that would be another tool that's coming that you could take a look at if you wanted to explore this in more depth. Sorry, Diane.
No, that's all right. I don't even know what I was going to say. It's fine. Oh, I was going to ask if anybody had any questions up to this point. I know we've not gotten even into the topic yet, but just speak up, unmute yourself and speak up if you have any questions. I know we say raise your hand, but I don't know if we'll see it. So it's probably better just to unmute and speak up. Okay. You're going to do this one?
Sure. As you noticed, this one's about continuing the work. If you've been in previous lead teacher meetings with Amanda, you would know all of the pillars of literacy that we're looking at. I thought it was important to include this when we talk about instruction and we're talking about explicit instruction. Today our focus is going to be on differentiation. So as we start thinking about that, where will you be including your differentiation? And so again, just sort of another visual to help you understand science of reading. And then the next slide is more geared toward adolescent literacy. And again, where will that differentiation happen? We know that we need explicit instruction in word recognition and language comprehension, but in what areas will you be able to meet the needs of not only your struggling readers, but also your advanced readers? This is from the fall, and I know when I saw this, when Amanda was presenting this, I thought this made so much sense. And for those of you that maybe have never seen this before, thinking about when we look at everyone who needs the instruction, the tier 1 students that we have, what I liked about the slide is, and I highlighted it, was the idea, differentiation and scaffolds for those that need it at every level. And then the next slide, no, that's right. Thinking about when we look at really targeted instruction, now we are looking at that differentiation. Now we're looking at what materials are there for our needs that we have. So again, just sort of bringing it all together from where we were in 6 through 12 ELA to where we are today. And then Amanda, you can certainly speak to this. When I saw this, and I know this is something she's created, it visually made sense to me to think about how we approach MTSS. And if you'd like to share a little bit about that, that'd be great.
Sure. I'll try to make it short and sweet because poor Diane and Christy have heard me talk a lot about this whole concept. I'm really, really passionate that our MTSS structures need to include all learners. And I've spent a lot of time diving into the research from the gifted literature as well to explore what this would look like. For those of you who may not know, I have a gifted intervention specialist endorsement as well. So I am very passionate about serving that group of students as we are also addressing those needs that our struggling readers and struggling learners have. And so I sort of took the idea of the regular MTSS pyramid and added an additional pyramid on the other side to create this rhombus, if you will. In the middle, it was really important for me to highlight the fact that all students are receiving differentiated support in core instruction. For a lot of our high flyers and gifted learners, a lot of their services are really in core instruction or happening in tier 1. And so it was really important to address it there and to also consider those kids that are underrepresented in those services as well, to make sure that we have kids who are being adequately challenged and adequately supported in tier 1. And then you'll see strategic interventions for gap closure, strategic interventions for enrichment, intensive interventions for gap closure, and intensive interventions for enrichment, with the idea that in core, we are working on grade level skill development and differentiating that as needed. And then as we go towards tier 3, we're intensifying support for gap closure, or we're intensifying support for increased breadth and depth, with the recognition too that this image of MTSS looks a little bit more like a continuum of services that our twice exceptional students can be served well by. And that was something I was really passionate about in the classroom, was making sure that even when my students were very bright, had a lot of strengths, that they were still receiving those services like OT or speech or, Wilson when they needed phonics support or whatever it was. So did I capture everything you wanted me to capture here, Christy?
Yes, absolutely.
Just a comment that students can travel between those groups. They might be in the middle for some, and then sometimes they may be clear at that end, and maybe other times they're clear at that end, but they can travel.
Yeah, and I think as I've read a lot of research about this, so there was a lot of research that came after a policy statement by the Council for Exceptional Children and TAG back in 2007. And then there was kind of a flurry of papers calling for this expanded model of MTSS that included gifted education. If you read a lot about this, and some of you may have read, A Nation Empowered or A Nation Deceived in some of those seminal papers on gifted ed, it's really just asking us to consider where those models for acceleration and some of the things that we do, gifted pull out, gifted push-in services, where they fit in this structure and how we can really manage our system well to meet the needs of all kids. So,
Great.
Yep.
I can speak to this one. When I saw this image also in our fall work, the only thing I kept thinking is, well, where will I plan to differentiate? Because we know that as we utilize our instructional time and we want to make sure that we are doing that explicit instruction in the I'm doing it, then where in the we do and the you do will we be adding those pieces to differentiate? So again, just a visual to sort of bring us back where we were in the fall to where we are today. And again, for those of you that maybe are new to some of this, as Amanda and I talked through some of the information she shared with people in the past, this slide has a link to previous slides done about vocabulary in the secondary classroom. If you looked at it before, or if you've never seen it before, it is really wonderful information that she has put together for us in terms of how do we go about vocabulary instruction for our students to really maximize what we can with our time. So I just wanted to include that for those of you that it's new, you have that resource there. Well, fun. Diane's going to talk a little bit about tech updates, or do you want me to?
I want you to.
Okay.
Diane can't talk much at all. So anytime I get an option, I'm going to say, Christy, Amanda.
I think, is it okay if I present this then?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to try and go ahead and present then. All right.
I should probably stop
Try
presenting.
that. All right, let me
Yep.
see if I'm doing it.
Yep.
Okay, only because I want to be able to click on a couple of things that I'm going to be presenting, so hopefully I can see it. So, yep, here we go. All right, so we are on the tech updates. I can't begin to tell you how excited I am about some of these updates for people. What I'm really loving about this is today I spent the day trying to think about how can some of these tools be beneficial to teachers. And then again, especially when you are using differentiation. One of the ones that the tech men here have shared is this one called the chat animator. I tried it out. Oh no, I tried it out today and I love the idea of using this. I know one of my friends told me they are delving into Romeo and Juliet right now. And I thought, what a wonderful way to have students take a scene and interpret it in their own language and share it as a text message between characters. And I kept thinking, what else could you do with this? This would be great in a debate. You could have somebody do a point and counterpoint, and you could share it with others through this animated chat. So again, just kind of a cool tool. The other tech tools that I wanted to share with you today are about what many of you maybe have been talking about in your own districts, this Chat GPT. If you are not familiar with this yet, it is absolutely something that you want to be familiar with. What I wanted to share with you is, and again, we heard about it last week, and it has just blown up. Everywhere I go, I'm hearing about it on Twitter. I just read a news article in the New York Times about it. On the slides, there's a link down here at the bottom for you to look at it and maybe join, but they are so inundated, it could take time for you to get on and play with this. And I would love to hear from some of you, just if you've tried this already. This, what I tried to give you today, and I'm going to try and open them so you can see them. I'm trying to give you a slideshow from Tory Trust that our tech people gave us here that really delves into what can we do as teachers? How are we using this? What can it do? What doesn't it do? What things are available to us? How do we use these resources? If you want to write some things in the chat, we can see the chat about maybe your thoughts on this. I tried it out today on so many different things. It is really fascinating. And I'll share a couple of the things that I was looking at today. But first, let me share this. This is just, if you're really trying to bring it together, this is sort of a one-page summary of what it is, what it does. So if you type in, write a lesson plan, and I did this today, write a lesson plan for an advanced 8th grader, showing a problem-based learning independent project over Romeo and Juliet. It literally wrote a lesson plan for me. It was amazing. Now, some of the things that we know, is it trustworthy? Not necessarily. The information is limited to anything before 2021. Is it safe? It takes a lot of your data. And again, you would never want to put anybody under the age of 13 on this. It is fascinating if you haven't seen it, all of the things it will do. It will generate tests. It will generate different text materials. Today I typed in, because as my friends know, I know one of my friends is working on Phineas Gage and the nonfiction book of Phineas Gage. So I looked at what she was working on. I looked at some of the lessons there, and I actually typed in, I think I typed in something like, one of the questions in their book was, give 2 examples that the doctor gave about how Phineas Gage showed that he was recovered. It literally wrote it for me. So many things that it can do for you as a teacher. I would highly recommend you take a look at it. It definitely is going to change the way we look at education and how we do things. This particular document that you have is another one that talks more about what it is, what it does, how it can help you. Again, pros and cons about how we can use it in the classroom, but it truly is fascinating. And oh, Suzanne, if you want to jump in and say some things about what you are working on or how you've been using it, please do.
So I found this a couple of weeks ago and started playing with it. I've talked to my students about it, specifically my college writing students about it. And we pulled it up and had it do a number of different tasks. It doesn't do, it can't respond to any personal like prompts. So if you would ask it to write, it can write like a personal narrative, but without any details, without any of that show don't tell usually. But it's fascinating how quickly it generates these responses. There's a lot of discussion out there about how a lot of the responses are formulaic and kind of robotic. And the same company also has something in the works that would detect student use of something like this that I'm sure will be coming out soon as well. But today I was thinking about how I can push my honor students a little bit more as far as style is concerned. And so I thought, okay, I want them to use parallel structure and maybe anaphora and figurative language. And I asked GPT to write a paragraph for me about why differences are a strength, and use parallel structure, figurative language, and anaphora. And it spit out a paragraph in like a minute and a half that doesn't have any evidence or elaboration, but it does demonstrate what parallel structure looks like, different options for how you could incorporate figurative language. And I'm going to use it as a way to start to talk to students about those, rhetorical strategies. And I mean, certainly we've got better mentor texts that we can use for those, but sort of as a quick introduction or, way to talk about it, as well as talk about Chat GPT, I thought it would be kind of a cool thing to incorporate. So
It's pretty amazing. I'll share a couple of things. I was able to pull it up. One of the things that we'll do is once you do a search, it will leave the search over here for you so you can see what you pulled up. I knew my friends will be going into Edgar Allan Poe soon, and one of their questions is, write a debate with evidence from the text of Poe's Telltale Heart with points and counterpoints about the sanity or insanity of a main character. Now, I did this two ways. I did it for an 11th grader to see what it would say. I also did this as an 8th grader. And so again, you could use this to be comparing things, looking at it. One of the other things I asked it, oh gosh, I think I said, oh, give me, oh my goodness, I did so many different things on this, but I think I asked it to take, I knew a poem. Could you write a poem? It writes poetry for you. But what I did today is we were thinking about Romeo and Juliet. It said, write dialogue between Romeo and Juliet for the balcony scene for a 7th grader to understand. It will do that. And then I also went in and I said, write a debate from this about the 8th grade character. So it gave me a debate. It also gave me a moderator. It gave me, and I asked it to specifically point out from text things. It told me from the text what it would do. I did one on paired text with Romeo and Juliet. What would be modern text? Now, some of it's not showing up because I know they were getting behind today. It does lag occasionally. I asked it to write a lesson plan for an advanced student. Here's my lesson plan. It even breaks it up into what would I do in different time frames. I say all of this because there is just so much to unpack with this. And I know we could spend an entire hour talking about how awesome this is and how many things we could do. I do want to save that for later and talking about that once we start to look at how would we use it to differentiate, because to me, that was where I was going with a lot of this anyway. But we could ask if there's any questions.
And I do know we have a lot of younger grade teachers in this call who are here for the gifted. And keep in mind, your gifted kids can't use it, but maybe you could use it to find samples, et cetera, et cetera. So that's probably what you would want to use it for. You could, with writing and things like that. Yeah.
And I'll let Diane go back to being the
Back to
presenter
sharing
then. Yeah.
again? Okay, sure. I just have to find my.
And that kind of leads us to,
yes.
and I can do it if you'd like me to, but that leads us back to where we started here with is our idea of differentiation and the quick review that we wanted to do. Really, it's about your thoughts on differentiation right now. Two more. Yep.
There we go.
When we, Diane, Amanda, and I started talking about differentiation, we had a lot of thoughts. Diane's first thought, give it a new name. My first thought, geez, differentiation. Let's not beat a dead horse. We've been talking about differentiation for years and years and years. Some of you, I know, have actually done presentations on differentiation. You are experts on this. As we started to go a little deeper, we kept thinking, well, how do we bring it all together? We know what it is. We don't have to talk to you so much about what it is, but how do we actually do it? What do you need to apply it? Some of the comments that I kept hearing, the one in the top corner there, especially if you are a K-5 teacher, you teach mixed ability students. It's so difficult when you have somebody in the 20th percentile as a reader with somebody that's in the 85th percentile as a reader, it is difficult. You've got a wide range of ability. How do you do that? At the bottom, I was a high school teacher for many years, and it's true. We often think about, and even if we're honors teachers, we often think about our grade level classes and our AP or honors classes. Well, of course they're different because we have a completely different content. So we're already differentiating, because we have rich discussion in our other classes. It's not exactly it. I know I have worked with my friends that have said, well, I'm teaching a new curriculum and I've already been told I must teach with fidelity to my honors and gifted kids because it's a brand new content and the administration doesn't really want us to veer out of that. So I really can't differentiate the content. Okay, then what can you differentiate? And then recently I had a friend of mine when I said, differentiation, tell me what you think. Many of you might think about this. If a student's in an honors class, you might be providing rigor. You might be providing ways to approach the text. You might have different opportunities to show understanding. You are all such experts in your field, and you are all coming in with various degrees of information about differentiation. So our goal is to just help you find some things that will be helpful in the next hour or so, that you will find that you can take back to your classrooms. And it's you.
Did a good job. So when Christy said, beating a dead horse, I found this book on my shelf. Maybe some of you remember this book, but we thought it needed to be revisited. So let me open it up here. And I have to get to that. Wait a minute. Okay, we're there? Okay. So this is a book that came out, 100 years ago. And when you're old like me, you have all these things still on your shelf. So in the title of the book is, if you're riding a horse and it dies, get off. So we're hoping this is none of you, right? There we go. No, wait, hang on a minute. We'll get it. I have to do this and I have to share.
You'll have to do present a window.
Yeah, where's present? There we go. Okay.
We think you have to stop and then hop back on.
Okay.
There you go. And then present. And then present the window instead of the.
There you go. How about a tab? Because I have it in a tab. Okay.
And then you have to, there you go.
Now we're good. Maybe. Okay.
It's working.
All right. And let's,
And then you can go to slideshow too.
yep. Okay. There we go. It's good to have someone next to you, and so you're not panicking over all this. All right. So this is Temple Elementary School in 1918. And the horse dies. Do you think a bigger whip would help? Let's visit some schools that are successfully riding dead horses. Has anyone thought of using an electric prod? Let's try a more experienced rider. Let's assemble a committee to study dead horses. I think we should raise the standards for riding dead horses. I think testing the horse would help. I think we should evaluate the horse's reputation. What about implementing an individual equestrian plan or IEP? Why don't we try adding an additional saddle? We will categorically deny there is anything wrong with the horse. The basic problem is the horse's parents, poor breeding. Let's try throwing more money at the problem. I think we should give the rider a competency test. What I think is needed is federal assistance. I know what to do. If you're riding a horse and it dies, get off the horse. Notice it's the child that's now the one who's giving the advice, and try something new. So, and that's the end of the story. So the reason why I wanted to say that, I think we can all make the connection, and that is, let's think about differentiation. Again, I would like to think about differentiation, throw that word out because it's been around forever, and let's talk about it just that we know it's what kids need. We're going to differentiate and it's going to be what the kids need, okay? It's not something different necessarily, but it's what the kids need. So let's think about that and think about it if you were, if you've had that word beat into your brain so often that you just want to I wish we could come up with another term, but we will eventually. So let's move on. Go there. All right. So we wanted to know, how has using differentiated practices and strategies enhanced your instruction? How has implementing the science of reading enhanced your instruction? And what is the value of blending these two strategies? I don't know if that's the right word, practices. So if you take a minute, think, well, I'll shut up, and maybe write some comments answering one of those two bullets or all three of them into the chat. Okay.
And I'm going to jump in just for 10 seconds here to say it's okay if you're just responding to one of the questions. If you have a lot of
Okay.
experience with differentiation and you
Yes.
haven't delved into the science of reading, that's fine. Reflect on how that's really enhanced your practice to be able to differentiate instruction for your students. If you have a lot of experience now with the science of reading, but you haven't done differentiation as deeply as you'd like, you can talk about that. But if you've done both, we would really like to hear from you. And even like theoretically, even if you haven't combined the two, what do you think the value of blending these two approaches might be? Notice we're differentiating the ways that you can respond.
And notice we want you to get off the dead horse, so you don't have to stay on that poor dead horse.
Maybe they just need to think. Maybe we are all just thinking right now
We're thinking.
instead of sharing.
I promise if you write something, we won't call on you right away.
Engagement. Thank you, Heather. Yep, for sure. And hopefully, as we move forward, thanks, Karen. Focusing on student strengths instead of just weaknesses, great point.
Motivation.
And for many of you, maybe it isn't your strength right now. As I said, for a lot of people that maybe have cluster groups and you have this mixed ability classroom, it's difficult. And maybe that's where you are right now. The experience is, I know I need to do more, but wow, I'm struggling with that. And you certainly don't have to share that out loud, but we've all been there. We get that.
I
Great
want to
answers.
add, just from my own reflection with this work, having done deep work and application with differentiation and the science of reading now, when we started talking as a state about the science of reading, we started having a lot of conversations about assessment, really getting a clear picture of what our kids know and where the gaps in their learning are. And that's something that resonates with all gifted intervention specialists, right? This idea that we need to pre-teach to know what they already know and to know what they still need to be a part of in that classroom, whole group instruction. And so to me, the science of reading and the conversations we're having as a field and as a state is really about knowing language, right? Knowing written language, spoken language, and how that relationship is reciprocal and how it builds across grade levels and how it becomes more complex. And the better we understand, one, the assessments we can use to get information about what our students know, and two, how language and our understanding of language and our comprehension and our writing abilities grow and expand and deepen over the years and become more complex, right? The better able we are to adjust our instruction to meaningfully differentiate to kids. So that was a big aha for me.
So again, I don't know that I know I had not thought of combining the two, differentiating with the science of reading, and I don't know the science of reading. So that was one of our goals of tonight's meeting, because we've got these two groups that are learning these different things or showing different things. And, and putting that together and making it a very, gosh, rich experience. So we're sort of doing the third bullet tonight is what our goal is.
Thank you to the Samanthas that just added, and I especially like that idea that when on-level students choose to challenge themselves, it's nice that we're even providing those opportunities for them, and definitely we want to be able to have them read a more challenging text. So thank you. Just kind of getting our brains into that review again of differentiation and where we are, taking the temperature check there. Okay, we're ready. All right. So as we think about differentiation, again, for most of you, this visual is something you've seen, you've worked on, you've maybe even presented yourself. But for some people, if this is new, or maybe a new way of looking at what you've heard about differentiation, this definitely just comes from Tomlinson, and it's one of those things to just refer back to. Where are you using this? What's it all about? And as Diane and I talked about, we always love those instructional strategies at the bottom, because it's a good reminder of the things that maybe, oh, check, I'm doing those. Oh, I haven't thought about doing that in a while. So that's how I view that slide. Okay, go on. Yep. And then as Amanda and I talked, we continued, well, Diane too, the word pre-assessment, assessment just kept coming up and coming up as we talked about differentiation. You cannot differentiate unless you are assessing. And so again, it's that infinite loop of assessment. And so the next slide is really our roadmap of where are we going tonight. So as we think about differentiation, we are looking at sort of this roadmap. First, we have a teacher presenter who will be sharing some strategies about how she has done differentiation, and that's going to be Ashley. And then after we listen to Ashley, we're going to be looking at some of the strategies from this book on making differentiation a habit, some things from Richard Cash. And then Diane's going to be sharing some things from Deidre Stafford in one of her meetings. Finally, we'll show a few things from Ian Bird, and then it's you. You are the experts. You've done this. Be thinking about what you can share for others as well.
Alrighty. Ashley, I see you're on. Hi. And she's even unmuted and everything. She is ready.
Yeah.
Again, I want to introduce Ashley. We got to know each other virtually for, gosh, almost a year before we met in person one night. And it was so cool. It's like, oh, you're really a real person. But Ashley I'll let her introduce herself some more, but she's an 8th grade teacher in Sandy Valley, and was in my book studies last year, and then is now getting her gifted endorsement through Malone. So I've gotten to know her there as well. So is Jen on, Ashley?
Jen is not on.
Okay. All right.
She had multiple events going on with children and activities. So
okay.
I'm not this was
Do you want me to share what the gifted enrichment lesson plan, or are you going to share from your computer?
Well, here's the thing. So I logged onto my computer and my audio is not working. So I'm on my cell phone. So if you please share, and I'll just tell you when to switch slides. I'm not going to read it off for you all in detail. I'm probably just going to talk more about the process. Of differentiation and how it's helped my students. So yeah, I'm an 8th grade ELA teacher at Sandy Valley.
Hang on a minute.
Oh,
wait a minute, 1 second. Diane is not the most technically capable person in the room. There we go.
Yay. Yeah.
Okay.
So, this is my 2nd year teaching at Sandy Valley, but my 16th year teaching overall. I'm from Ohio, but I moved away for my teaching jobs, and I taught for 8 years, 7th grade in Southwest Virginia, and then I relocated to Maryland and taught at a school right outside of Baltimore City. So we were on the Baltimore County line. And they recently made the news, and for like not good things. It was very eye-opening there. We had a high population of refugees and Black and Hispanic student population. So it was very diverse, and probably and I was put at the high school. They bumped me to high school. And so probably the most challenging but like rewarding experience of my life. And really, I had to force myself to be open to trying a lot of new things on the fly sometimes, just to reach my students and make productivity. So we got this idea, my teaching partner and I, Jen Beatty, we are on a curriculum and we work with novels. And the first novel that we work with is Inside Out and Back Again. And it's a focus on a Vietnamese refugee. And she escapes, and it's loosely based on the author's actual experiences. And so for in we noticed, for our gifted kids and our honors kids, the curriculum that we are working off of doesn't really include a lot of higher level thinking opportunities until you reach the end of the unit. And we were kind of like, well, that's kind of unfair. Like, some of our kids are sitting here and, like, they're kind of bored. So like, we know how to read a room. And so we came up with the idea. I am not a differentiation expert, although I am slowly becoming one as I delved into Tomlinson like a whole bunch, during one of my courses. So we came up with this plan. And Diane, if you want to go ahead and switch the slide. Thank you. We just sat and brainstormed, and we also had Kristen Woods help us out on it, because she's one of our amazing gifted go-to people. I had very little, and Jen and I, we both admitted to ourselves, like, we had very little experience working with a gifted population, because much of our teacher training and focus is on those kids who are struggling. And we don't want to ignore those kids, but that was where I felt the most comfortable. When I'm thinking of a strategy, it's always, how can I make this easier? How can I lower the difficulty of this task? Or how can I scaffold more to bring them up? I really have little experience with, okay, how do I take this to a higher level? So it was kind of a challenge. It was a need that we both acknowledged. Especially from our, like, you can't have differentiation without pre-assessment. So in the feedback that we're getting from our students, like, yes, we have very bright students, but they are not giving us the feedback that we want on assignments. They are missing, their answers were kind of blasé. They miss a lot of context. And it's like, and also you can read a room, like, you get the feel, okay, I'm just doing this. I want the A. I'm just doing this, but I'm not really engaged. They don't really want to speak up. They don't want to volunteer. They kind of dodge you. So it's like, well, what do we really want them to do? We have kids with very high ability. What do we want out of them? So we kind of focused on the learning goals, and what we really want them to do is to explore the topic of refugees, not just understand the book, because we understand the gifted population can take tests all day long. They can read books and take tests all day long, and they're probably going to ace them. They're very good with information, but are they good with thinking? How do we help them? And I think from just my past experiences, we're becoming more of a global society. If we want our students to go on to professions and go on to be participants in this world, they have to get to know other people. They have to get to know some other perspectives and see the other side of things. And so this ended up teaching a little bit about diversity without, we didn't make it in your face, but this is a component to it, learning about other people and other cultures. So we started off with learning goals. Diane, you can go ahead and change the slide. And then we just broke it down in 2 steps with them. One change that we made from last year coming into this year is, we noticed through pre-assessment, our students have a really hard time finding their own information. Researching is sort of a struggle for them. So what I had my students do, of course, this novel moves very fast. We were able to finish it in a very short amount of time, but I brought in, I actually used some outside resources. I know a debate coach from New Philadelphia City Schools. And he has an extensive background in rhetoric and debate. And so I called in an expert and I said, well, help me out with this. How do I get kids to research? How do I get them to ask their own questions? How do I get them to articulate what they know? And we spent a couple weeks, and he did a crash course on research and debate with them, and that primed them for this project that they're doing. And really where we want them to go is, what are refugee experiences around the world? I kind of gave them a list of countries where they could start, and I wanted them to research that, but I also wanted them to make those comparisons between the main character in our book. So not only are they researching a global experience, so in order to do this, you have to learn background about another country. You have to learn some background about different customs and cultures and why there is a struggle there. What's the geopolitical situation going on that's making people leave? So now it's cross-curricular. So now we've crossed into social studies. We've crossed into geography, because a lot of kids, they don't know their way around global maps, and that's okay. That's okay. They're exceptionally bright, but if our kids haven't had that exposure, I wanted to give them that exposure. And then ultimately, the highest level question is, we ask them to evaluate, what is being done, and or what could be done on a global scale, or what policies could be put into place to make transitions for refugees a little easier. What could be done to help them? And, I'll admit, the first year we did this project, we did not get the rich responses that we were hoping. And really what it comes back to is, as teachers, we had to self-reflect some of the questioning, some of the steps, some of the things that we were asking them to do. It's like, if I'm an 8th grader, this is how I might think of that. This is why they didn't hit it. Now this year we kind of went back and, we did go back and revised things to make it very explicit what we're looking for. I want the comparisons to the main character. I want them thinking about the true experiences of refugees and what could be done differently, and how does that stack up to what is done currently to help them. So Diane, you may go ahead and advance the slide. Those are the countries that I broke down for them that seem to have a lot of geopolitical crisis. But also I was open to their ideas as well. And so I just kind of keep that open. Like, if you have another idea, if there's somewhere else you want to study or bring to my attention, like, let's talk about that. Like, let's go for it. And I think that's also the important part of differentiation, is having time to give them that feedback. You assess along the way feedback, and you may go ahead and advance the slide. Sorry, this is awkward. I'm so awkward about
It's fine.
I don't want to, and so we had them preparing for their research, and I laid out some sources, but really this time around, they were primed with their speech and debate materials. They knew where to go and look. They knew how to get started with that. So really, they did a much better job this time around with just having sources. And the person I brought in, and I'm not ashamed to admit what I don't know. And I admitted to this. I said, I don't know how to teach debate. I am kind of out of ideas. I'm hitting a wall with teaching them research and quality sources. Yes, we can do work. I had worksheets on it. We laid it all out, the steps that you need to take, but how do I get them to decide what is relevant and quality? And then how do I get them to articulate what knowledge have you gained from that? And it was kind of interesting. And what was cool about the debate is it flopped, by the way. They have not done a whole lot of public speaking. So this was my kids dipping their toe into public speaking. And a lot of them thought they were a little overconfident. and they did not realize all the background information you need to acquire to go make an argument. But here's the thing, I could have told them that till I was blue in the face. They had to see it for themselves. And it was impactful. So I think the learning component, it was successful. In that they gained something from that. So with that being said, for their research on their projects, our groups went above and beyond to include background, because they're like, oh, wait, if I'm going to talk about the split between North Korea and them being communist, I have to mention something about the Korean War, so they had to dig a little bit. And I think with differentiation, what it allows for is, especially for my gifted students, is it allowed them to dig in. And I also kept the products open, so that they could pursue things that were of their own interest. The products, I wish I had an hour, because I would show you all their presentations. These are the guided research questions. Yeah, you can go ahead and advance the guided research questions of what they need to be thinking about while they're doing the research. The other thing we changed this time was we made them an accountability log, to where they had to answer some of those questions. Oh yeah, oh my gosh, what they came up with on their own for products just blew my ideas out of the water. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I just can't say enough over their creativity. But with the guided questions, they had to do that. They had to work on those guided questions sort of as they went, because I wanted them to reflect on what they read. Like, yes, I know you went to the United Nations website and you found this and that and you typed it up. Well, tell me what that means. So what do you walk away with today? Like what have you gained from this? So I think that was helpful. And that was also helpful in keeping some of my students on track. I have some of the most, like this year, it's a wonderful problem, but it's kind of been a challenge. I have some of the most intelligent children I have ever worked with, like in my life. Their IQs, they're so high, and their interests are so broad. So it's really hard keeping some of them on track, because they want to quickly move on to other things. And I think just that log, that accountability of, okay, well, let's come back to this, or can you, and it allows me to like peek in on what they're doing. When he posted, he put a picture of one country's flag on the slide. And I said, well, can you tell me how that connects to what you were doing? But in his mind, he made some total other connection, but he could not articulate, like that doesn't come across. So it's like, yes, I know you see how this connects. How are you going to make somebody else see how this connects? So it kind of like, oh, I need to back up, and I need to put myself back on track. That was kind of like a self-check. And so with the products, as you can see, like the choice board, it's meh. I mean, I'm not like, oh, I have the best idea. It's meh. But I kind of leave it open-ended. I had one group this year, they built an obstacle course for other classmates to go through to explain the impacts of the Haitian earthquake and how that produced refugees. I mean, we booked the gym for a morning, and they did. And they had scenario cards for their classmates and had that drawn up. And like, the cool thing is like the students learned from this, and they learned from each other. And then when they were presenting, they realized that they hit snags, but it was like a point of like, aha. So like, how can we think about this different? Like, what can we do now to troubleshoot this really quick and carry on? And to me, and I don't know how you guys feel, I mean, imagine the same way, like, isn't that true learning? Like, isn't this what we want our kids to be doing? We want them to be functional. With some of my gifted kids, there's some of the executive skills and some of the soft skills that they miss. With the differentiation, they're all very high flyers, but the pairings I did on them were more their social skills. I have some, so I kind of teamed up, the miscongenialities with the I don't make eye contacts, like I'm not, I'm not going to talk to you. And that's kind of on purpose because, quite frankly, if they're going to go to college, they're going to enter careers, they're probably going to function, at least academically on a very high level. I can see them, many of them being future leaders. And that is wonderful. That's wonderful that you can do the book work and all the things and pass all the tests to get there. But can you communicate with a coworker? Can you communicate with, a colleague? Could you work on a team? And not always be right all the time? Or could you say to somebody who's off track in a nice way, hey, can we bring this back around? Or hey, I see that you're confused. Can I help you with something, instead of being condescending? So those are some of the softer skills that I just felt they needed to work on. And is it perfect? Like, anytime you put kids, like you challenge kids, there was a fair amount of whining, like at first, especially like with the debate component, when I had them do rebuttal and I had them come up with questions for each other, on the spot. It was very uncomfortable. But they did it. And it's okay to, like, you don't have to master everything the first time that you try it. So Diane, you can advance. I'm trying to think. So product details, I mean, I lay it all out for them. You can advance. Oh, that's it. So as you can see, the plan, I mean, it's pretty simple. I kind of give them I give them the prep work and I give them the instructions and I say, go. And then I guide them as they go through that. And so I think that's where, like, the book I just worked with Tomlinson is like that, taking time out, like, hey, let me see where you are. And giving them feedback of, like, a lot of our kids, they love the research and they love writing, their slides, they had paragraphs, on their slides. And I'm like, okay, but you're going to have to communicate these concepts to your classmates. So, can we think of ways to pare down this information? Some of the kids, they're teenagers. So let me just copy and paste. I'm going to do quotes. They had slides full of quotes. And I'm like, okay, that's really great that you found all that information. What does that mean? Can you explain to me what that actually means? And so I just think, one of the things I complain about as a teacher, like, I never get enough time with them. I don't get enough time with them. And that's so true, but it's like so important. So them, me having, like, being able to circulate and go around the room and, like, check on their checklists and monitor what they're doing and just give them that constant feedback was really helpful. What we noticed last year is we worked with students we call it the talent development, or the bubble kids. We, kids who are not necessarily in the honors class, but demonstrate either a high level of interest in a project, or demonstrate that they have skills where they can hang on a project like this. We included them with the gifted learners, and it boosted confidence. It also helped our gifted learners with some of their soft skills, because now this is somebody outside of your gifted realm. This is somebody who might be a little more social. This might be somebody who is a little more messy and a little more creative. But merging the two, oh my gosh, like the products they put out were just, they're just amazing. Like, I just stand in awe. I'm like, wow, you guys are so great. I had a team last year create a whole website. Like, they created a whole website on we do the same project, same style of project for To Kill a Mockingbird. They did a whole closet a fashion website on what the characters would have worn. And if these people were in a play, how would you dress them? And they had prices, and they invented like an actual shopping cart. You could go in there and like actually like buy the items, off their website.
Ashley, I'm gonna help have you use that as our segue into
Sorry.
what we're gonna be talking. No, that's great. And
Yeah,
you're sharing
sorry,
such
I
great
talk.
information.
Take over.
I so love your passion because I know I can tell that you just love what you're doing with those because you had so many great points. And some of the things you mentioned are things that we're going to be talking about as well. What a great segue. Thank you so much for that information.
Ashley, let me just do one other. So basically, in your experience with that project, it was basically that they were able to you differentiated the product, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I want to get back to that because that's what we're going to get into here in just a minute.
And I'm going to build on some of the things you were saying, and I didn't want to forget it about the questioning that you had and the depth and complexity and the questions you used, because that is something I'm going to share too, to help build on what you were talking about. So thank you so much for that. I know we've been here over an hour. So again, I'm squiggling in my chair, and I'm sure some of you need to stand up, stretch, get something to drink, come back, refreshed. We're going to move on. Again, we have about maybe 30 more minutes of information, hopefully at maybe 15 minutes, and then letting you share some things together. What I wanted to share with you today also, and Ashley, just to let you know, your microphone is still on your phone there, just so that there's no feedback. One of the things that we mentioned, if you want to go to the next slide, is that we wanted to share some strategies from Diane Hecox. And again, Diane's been mentioning this book on that slide that you see in front of you right now. If we can put that, I'll try and remember to do that now. We'll put the link for that in the chat box. If you're interested and if you signed in late and you didn't fill out that form, at the last look, I believe there were 21 of you or maybe 22 of you that would like a copy of the book. And I believe we have enough to get those to you. I had never seen this book before. I had heard of her and I had seen some other things that she had written, but I felt like some of the things that she had done with this book were really helpful. So I'm going to go ahead and share a couple of things with you. Again, I don't want to take a lot of time to beat a dead horse on differentiation, but some of those things that maybe you haven't used, that you could use the graphic organizer. You want me to share that and then I can move through. I'll share. I'm gonna go share. I'm gonna share through.
Okay.
And then it'll make it a little faster because I've got to pull up some of the other things on that slideshow. So let me just share with you a little bit from this that I'm going to highlight some things in the book so that when you get your book, you will have some things that you'll be able to take a look at. So one thing I wanted to just mention, if you are not familiar with this book, as Ashley was saying too, this is not just for gifted kids, it's for everyone. So we want to make sure that we understand our differentiation is for all levels of students that we work through. This was one of the things I thought was really helpful just to start out in this book was an inventory. For me, as I looked through it, my thought process was, how am I differentiating the curriculum? What is the planning I'm doing? But more importantly, which of these instructional strategies have I used? And which ones haven't I used that I might want to try and use? And when you click on that link, and all of this is in the slideshow, all the links are there, so you have copies of these, but they're also in your book. It was really helpful for me just to sort of take a temperature about where I was when it came to differentiation. When it comes to the differences between how do we differentiate for our regular students, our grade level students, as well as how do we differentiate for our gifted students, this link, and I won't click on this one, you can do that yourself, but it gives you this one page sort of look at how things might be a little different. And the one thing that stood out to me was the second to the last one. When we differentiate for everyone, we are using assessment tools. We are trying to identify and plan for all the learning preferences, the readiness, and the interests. However, for gifted, the keywords there is if we know that they have mastered those, it is time to eliminate, replace, and extend. And so what do we do when our students already know it? And so again, for me, that really stood out. You can take a look at that particular graphic organizer there. Diane breaks this into basically these 4 strategies for gifted students. And I wanted to just touch on a couple of things from each one. Again, as you get your book, this is chapter 10. The first one there, differentiating the content process product. If you're in gifted ed, that is something ingrained in you, content process product all the time. If this is new to you, maybe that's something you haven't thought of or you haven't really been exposed to yet. One of the things that stood out in the chapter for me is this idea that, sure, you can look at the next grade level standards. You might look at that ODE crosswalk and think about how you might take a standard in 7th grade and move it into 8th grade. Also, for me, one of the things that stood out was this idea of abstract concepts and advanced research skills. As we looked at that chat GPT, and I think Suzanne mentioned this, one of the things we know is that if students are using that, it does not have the research. It does not have the evidence. That's a great way to have students find something, a piece of text, go back and see, is it credible? Is it valuable? And then under process, obviously acceleration, and Amanda and I had quite a spirited conversation today about acceleration. I feel very passionate about acceleration. And we had a lot of discussion about what that means as far as the process. What I know is that in a grade level classroom, it's pretty difficult to bring everybody on board to agree to whole grade accelerate a student or even subject accelerate a student. So sometimes in our classes, we need to figure out ways to eliminate and replace the grade level work they're doing with something else. That often means more rigor. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Real world problems in the product. Like Ashley was showing the different options she had for the product. What I liked about Diane's work here in the book is having them go beyond the ways that they're familiar with. And so again, original products. When we think about going above the grade level standards, again, thinking about grade level standards for your advanced and high flyers and gifted kids, the grade level standards are the floor. We want them to be reaching that ceiling. Again, acceleration though, it isn't always as easy to just step on the toes of the teacher in the next grade level and say, oh, I'm just going to teach your content. So what do we do for extension? What can we do for complex learning and cognitive learning instead? And that sort of leads to her next point about posing questions. When Ashley was talking about her project that she had done, this is what I felt was really helpful in looking at the complexity of our questioning. What are the questions we're asking? Now, many of you, especially if you're in gifted ed, you may be very familiar with the icons of depth and complexity from Kaplan. This link provides questions. They are parallel with those icons, but especially as I thought about 6 through 12 ELA teachers, just having this sort of hat on of looking at these questions. Are we including these questions for depth and complexity in the work that we're giving for students? I liked this just sort of as a checkpoint. Am I using questions like this? And so, and I know Amanda and I talked about that. Amanda, if you wanted to pop in on any of that, feel free.
I just think as we're building text sets, and I know I think you were planning on touching on that just briefly at some point. Those questions layer on so beautifully. When you're thinking about taking a text like To Kill a Mockingbird and creating a context for the time, right? And maybe some other court cases that occurred, pulling in some contemporary news articles, perhaps, or contemporary texts like The Hate U Give or something like that, that further fleshes out the theme of the text and those enduring understandings. You can use these depth and complexity questions to have conversations about the ethics, to consider how things have changed over time, to look at some of those interdisciplinary connections. It's just if nothing else, if that's new to you and you're part of the ELA group, I would highly recommend taking a look at that. It's just another way of thinking about rigorous questions and text-dependent questions.
I know Heather has done a lot with depth and complexity, and I know Kristen Woods has as well. And it can go all the way down. That is something you can do way down into first grade. And I apologize. I know this is ELA 6 to 12, but I also know I have some elementary people on here for gifted. But the depth and complexity is all grade levels. And I know I've watched in Kristen's room as they use those icons. These are 3rd and 4th graders, and they really get into it and they love finding examples. So that's something you could do.
As Ashley was talking, I was in my mind, I was thinking about this particular slide here because she was talking about all of those things, talking about interdisciplinary connections, talking about those questions that she was asking in terms of, the ethics of it. Those are all great ways to get kids thinking deeper. So I really loved that particular graphic organizer. And then also, one of the things that was in this book that I thought for those of you that maybe have been doing differentiation for a long time, but again, sometimes we need something new to think about. I really loved this designing tiered assignment. Mainly, I loved the trigger words because they were great reminders for me about things that I would want to include in my lessons. I'll show you a little bit about what this looks like. I know it's hard to see, but it's divided into what are those trigger words for critical thinking? What are those trigger words for creative thinking, and what are the trigger words for problem solving? And then of course, Bloom's taxonomy. So again, some really good resources just to get us thinking about what am I doing in my classroom? What can I add to my classroom? What would be beneficial for my students? And again, as Amanda and I talked through this, we wanted to make sure we continually say, we're only sharing one chapter about gifted kids from this book. This book has just tons of information about what you can do with all students. And that leads us to another book that is from Diane Hecox, which is called Differentiation for Gifted Learners, and also one from Richard Cash, which is Advancing Differentiation. So Diane, did you want to say anything about this?
I just have these books, all these resources I pretty much have on my shelf. If you ever want to just look at one, or sometimes it's not one you want to, you're going to pull out every other week or something, but you just need a refresh. Both of these are great examples, and all three of them. I have tons of books. You can call me and we can go through some, and I can maybe send you some. You can borrow them for a time.
So one of the nice things that we have discovered about using these books is that they do have digital content that come with them. Both Diane's and Cash's books have about 67 pages of digital content and graphic organizers and lists and things and templates for designing lessons. If you are interested in any of those, please don't hesitate to reach out. We can provide those for you. We don't want to put everything out there, but a couple of things I wanted to highlight. Things like this, if you've never considered doing a graphic organizer to justify your thinking, summarizing a word into, so you put your text in the middle. What is the author implying, citing specific texts and inferences? Why would the author write about this? So again, some different thinking, some different things that you would have kids doing with that. And then the other one that I really thought was really helpful for me is, again, I was an ELA teacher for a long time thinking about this. Oh, I thought that'd be kind of clever to put this maybe online for my students to respond to. But I really love this idea about visible thinking for understanding in this graphic organizer that's here about just the different things, making connections, evidence, reasoning. So again, some new things to hopefully share with you that you can take a quick look at. And
I'm going to jump in real quick, super fast.
Please.
So I have the book in my hand right now, and I was leafing through as you were talking. Something I thought that was really interesting for the high school folks with us, because I know some of you do teach honors or advanced coursework. There are some pages in this text as well that take you through a checklist of criteria and characteristics of courses at that level. What I think is interesting is there are some out of the box items on there, like helping students challenge preconceived notions about the content that perhaps we don't always think about. So I just wanted to give that little plug there too.
Thank you. And again, all of these things are, if you have the book, which many of you are going to be getting this book, downloadable PDFs, digital resources. And if you are interested in the digital resources from these other books, talk to us. We can find some of those for you. And Deidre Stafford.
Okay, can I go back to Jen Neal put in the chat that their administration team together just read chapter 4 of the Red Book. Jen, you want to unmute for a second? I asked if there were any ahas. Is there something that really spoke to you? Because obviously, I don't even know what chapter 4 is. So
yeah, chapter 4 talks about gifted service models because gifted, and it shows several different visuals of different models of how to service students across the whole system. And so because our school already uses the RTI model, it shows 6 other kinds in addition to that. I really liked the graphic that was used at the beginning of this presentation with the sort of sideways diamond. And I think that for our team, it was really eye-opening about how we could implement RTI for gifted learners, because we're a bit of a smaller school system. So looking at what that looks like and what the best service model is, and trying to figure out how to do that K-12, really well. It was helpful to read through all the different models and what those different tiers should look like, both for enrichment and extension, but also for like when a gifted student starts to underperform, at what point do we create interventions for them to have them meet their maximum potential? Why are they disengaging from the classroom?
Perfect. That's great. I just needed a reminder because I look at the book so often and then I put them away and forget what's in there. So that was a good reminder. Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
All right. Did you want to share
Well,
about
you
Deidre?
just keep sharing.
Okay.
As I said earlier, Deidre Stafford was here back in 2019, and her title then was the nuts and bolts of it. And we had asked her to do differentiation, but don't call it differentiation because I was on that same bandwagon then. But this is if you go to this, and by the way, this whole slide presentation will be on my website, the Gifted website for the ESC, and it'll be on Amanda's as well and Christie's as well. But if you click on that link, it will take you to what she presented that day. And I don't, I know what it's like to get something at 5:40 on a Thursday night and you say, I don't know if I'm going to remember that. So I sort of did a table of contents of the slides. And if you're interested in any of those topics, you can see the slide numbers there. So you could just go look at those things. The big one I like is what differentiation is and is not. That's really good because sometimes I think we think we're differentiating, but we may not be. I know when I've been teaching my gifted classes at Malone, very often that is one of the common threads that comes through. Also, Christy had mentioned tiering lessons earlier. She did that. That's I don't know if it's the easiest way to differentiate, but it's a common way to differentiate. And so if you think that might be a way to start, she gives a whole lot of samples of what you could possibly do there. And then I know a lot of people say, I know I should differentiate, but how do I manage this classroom? And obviously she spent a lot of time on managing a classroom when you've got differentiation going on. So that took up a lot of time. Then, as we said earlier, you can't differentiate without differentiating assessments. And so she spent time on that as well. And then there were just some other tools to help with differentiation. It was a really worthwhile day. It's not the same as having her there, but if you have some time, you might want to go back and visit that.
Thank you. Finally, one more expert on gifted ed and resource. We could spend another half an hour looking at Ian Bird's resources.
Or a day.
Or a day. What I'm going to do is, and if anybody that's ever looked at Ian Bird's Birdseed, if you've ever looked at this website, it is going down the rabbit hole. There's no getting around it. It is just one link after another link of information about gifted kids. I wanted to create one slide that said, where can you start? This one, the first one, if you click on this link at the top, it will take you into all things differentiation. But I especially liked that Ian Bird, who spends a lot of time talking about things like depth and complexity, gives some examples about how to differentiate and also talks about it, differentiation go wrong. What is it? What is it not supposed to look like? And then I found one link that was a focus on ELA, since that was our meeting. But again, we will move on from Ian Bird. Obviously, if you're in gifted ed, you've probably heard of him. If this is something new, if you're a 6 through 12 teacher, it's something to certainly check out. Lots and lots of information about gifted ed. So now it comes back to all of you and being able to collaborate and talk about what you're doing. Listening to Ashley, I can hear how passionate she is and what she does. And it's so wonderful to hear the purposeful ways that she's putting differentiation into practice. And this is where we would like to give you an opportunity. Oh, I'm going to go back a minute. Give you an opportunity to start to work together on that. I'm going to set up some breakout groups. I added this slide because I knew that in the November meeting, even though I was not able to be there, that Amanda had talked about differentiating some writing things for students. And so Amanda, if you did want to talk about this for a minute and kind of go, if you had anything you wanted to add.
Sure. I'll just say, as I've read a lot of writing research over the last several years, there was a strategy called SRSD, self-regulated strategy development, that I came across. And I kept thinking, you know, I'll get to it when I have time. And you know how it goes, you never have time. So I kept making it further down the list. And finally, I took time over last summer to investigate SRSD. As I was looking into it, I was looking at it through two lenses, you know, looking at struggling readers, looking at, well, gifted learners, and pretty much everybody in between. What is the promise for a strategy like this? The really cool thing I'll say, just really briefly as an overview here, because I know we want to get into breakout groups, is that the neat thing about this approach is that it does focus on structuring writing tasks. I think about how many gifted writers I had and high-flying writers who had really great ideas, but the structure was really poor. The organization was poor. Sometimes even the organization of the materials they were using to write. This approach, it embeds some self-regulatory strategies. And as I started processing this, I thought, you know, this is something that could be used K-12. It's very well researched K-12. It's not as researched with gifted learners in particular, but I think there's promise there. And I just put 3 examples on this slide to show sort of a way that you could simply differentiate an activity like this. So this is called Tide. It's just a graphic organizer to use to create you know, a basic informational text. And you can see I've used images for elementary, that fewer boxes for them to fill out, some color coding as an additional scaffold there. And then that example on the far right that you can't see anymore had additional boxes. And it has a checklist actually at the top as well that reflects some more advanced components like thesis statements and so forth. So I think there's a lot of stretch here, and you can think about other graphic organizers you might use as well. But the added advantage of SRSD, just to share it out with those of you who work with specifically gifted learners, is that there's a lot of flexibility in this document. You can use it to support the research projects that your students are engaged in, but it also embeds self-regulation. So there's a lot of planning, revising, goal setting, goal monitoring, components, tools, handouts, and things like that that are available. And if you're interested in that, you can just reach out to me or reach out to Diane or Christy, and we can make sure that this presentation is shared with you and some of the websites where you can find materials to consider whether it would meet your needs.
Thank you, Amanda. What we would like to do, and I know it's 5:46, so we would love for you to have time to actually share your ideas with people in your same age group range. I've created some Google Meets. They are separate from our Google Meet here. The links are now in the chat box if you would like to go to those. And some of the things, don't go yet. Some of those things to discuss are which resources or strategies did you hear today that you're already implementing that you'd like to share with someone? What is one resource that you found interesting that you would plan to do? What questions do you have for other people? You know, what are you getting through? What are you doing? And then again, one of the things I would love to hear you talking about is that Chat GPT as a resource for differentiation. So what do you think? 10 minutes?
10 minutes.
10 minutes. So we'll take about 10 minutes. I'm going to put the slide link back into your other chats, so you know which group to come back to. I know some of my friends had said they needed to leave at 5:30, so I know some people had to go ahead and leave. But when we come back, then we'll wrap it up with sharing out a little bit, and then also what we'll do next and our next steps and some of those other slides. Well, I'm going to share one more thing for the 6 through 12 people before we leave today, and that is, I know many of you incorporate all sorts of differentiated lessons, though you might not feel compelled to go to the High Impact Conference and share those. At our next meeting, I would love for you to consider sharing out with our group as we move into cultivating a love of literacy with science of reading. I feel like there's a lot of things we could talk about when it comes to how we're using differentiation to help students love literature. So for our next meeting for 6 through 12 ELA, when I see you on March 9th, please share your expertise. I know listening to Ashley today, it was so nice to hear how somebody else has done that. So please take some time before I see you in March to think about how you might do that.
One thing with differentiation, I always say, take baby steps. Those people who haven't done it before, I'm big on baby steps, and you don't have to do it with every single unit, every single lesson. Try it once, it'll go easier. You'll have that one to build on. Try it again and again and again. It will become a habit. But just don't think in every single thing at first. It'll be too daunting to do that. I'm gonna, it's Christy flips around there. So again, my next meeting is March 16th, which is more of a math focus. I know that some of you are involved with the math ACE team, so you may not be able to make that. I apologize. Next year, we're making a concentrated effort to not over double book on certain dates, so that won't happen as much. But I don't know I have not planned that meeting yet, so I don't know what it'll be. But we had talked back in September when I saw many of the reading people, and I'd ask you to do what Christy just asked you to do for the next meeting. So if there's something that you did from that meeting way back in September that you shared or that you tried and that you thought was very successful, please share that with me. I think I'm going to put a shared folder on the website so that we can put those ideas there. So please share those with me if you have anything. Thanks.
Just a big thank you. I know how tiring it is to go through a full day, and especially those high school teachers like myself as a middle school teacher, getting up and starting your day, being there by 7 a.m. Thank you for being here. We wanted to share email addresses and links to our websites to make sure if you do want to reach out, if you have any questions at all, if you saw something today, you'd like us to share it with you in a different way, or you couldn't get to it, please feel free to reach out. Please share this information with your colleagues. This really is all about collaboration. And again, please consider being part of the High Impact Conference, especially maybe using some of that information. I saw Amanda put in the chat box, all this stuff with Chat GPT. Boy, there could be a lot of really good resources coming up in how you've used it in your classroom for our High Impact Conference. So thank you again for being here. That is all I have tonight, unless you have anything else. So thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Anything good of the order before you go? If not, thank you. Have a great night, and please reach out if we can help you with anything.